Hello. Today we're here at One World Trade at Hyperscience headquarters in New York City. I'm joined today by Russ, who's VP of Global Sales. And Russ, if you could introduce yourself for the audience.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, it's a pleasure to welcome Reveal Group here to One World Trade Center. Russell Malz, I run our worldwide sales team, and that includes our channel team.
Great. Nice. Well, thanks for joining us today. I'm Eli. I work at Reveal as a senior manager, and I've been doing a lot of our architecture and integrations with Hyperscience and other tools in the market.
So Eli, before we jump into this, I'd like to just take a minute and understand a little bit about your background and what got you into Hyperscience.
Sure. Actually, my journey is a little interesting. I used to be a nuclear physics researcher, particularly working around doing large-scale simulations on supercomputing infrastructure. But I changed into consulting and started my journey in RPA and quickly saw the value that Hyperscience brought in, particularly around expanding RPA's functionality with data ingestion and digitization.
Fantastic.
So Russ, how long have you been at Hyperscience, and can you share a little bit of your background and your journey?
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been here a little over a year. And in terms of my background, about 7-8 years ago, I was convinced that AI and ML were going to change the world. I had a good stint for a couple of years at an AI Silicon Valley startup. That company was probably a little early, was very focused on an AI platform. And some of the companies that came after, Data Robot, et cetera, did really well in that space. I then went to Blue Prism, where I met some great people. We went through hypergrowth, and we saw RPA take off, and also the concept of intelligent automation. And as I was thinking about intelligent automation and where things were going, I was really intrigued by Hyperscience. So I came here with a purpose. I met the founder. I really got a good understanding of where their company was going. And I would categorize Hyperscience as a machine learning first company that's exceptionally good at what we call stage zero, understanding documents and content.
And so what does stage zero really mean for a company approaching IDP for the first time?
So in our vernacular, when we think about stage zero, a key point is before you can execute decisioning based on AI, even before you can do many RPA type processes, you have to understand analog information, often paper-based. You have to understand different types of content. And this document understanding can be a real challenge. If you don't understand your documents right, you can get into a garbage in, garbage out scenario. So the idea that any company that's going to execute on an intelligent automation program, a company that's going to grow an AI capability, a company that's going to use more automation to do work better, faster, these companies are going to need to be able to ingest and understand documents in a very accurate way. And that's where we excel.
So do we see clients struggling with ingesting that data if they haven't gone through the right preparation? Is that a common pitfall for implementers?
I think it is, and I think there's also some older technology that's out there. So the older technology might be good to a point. There's a lot of manual intervention that's often error prone. Some companies are struggling hiring people to do these more boring tasks. So having technology that can very accurately extract data from documents and from content is becoming more and more important, I think. We've seen the Great Resignation. We've seen many companies struggle hiring workers. So the idea that less boring work can be done by workers, particularly new workers, I think, is becoming more and more relevant to many companies in many industries and government.
And so we talked a little bit about a digital assembly line. So I think here we're talking about the content of the document, but there's a bigger picture when we're talking about IDP implementations, integrating and giving a place for people to handle exception cases. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there's two elements here. One is there's a big human in the loop element also associated with our software, and that's really important. So we believe that automation will change the world, but it's best done when it's led by humans. We call this human-centered automation. So that's really core to our company and how we work. The second component is working with partners like Reveal Group, right? It's really critical because in intelligent automation, you're going to have many steps. In a digital assembly line, there are many steps. And the idea is you're going to take this analog information, right? You're going to make it digital, and then it's going to flow through some sort of work stream. And this is where our partners come in, right? In the work stream, you might use RPA, you might use some other process technology, you might use intelligent AI, you might use machine learning. There's many things that can happen, but if we can put together automations that start with ingesting information accurately and end with some sort of decisioning, right? That's where we think the real magic is going to happen. That's what we're really excited about.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I'd like to show everyone a little bit about Hyperscience and how we do these kind of integrations. So yeah, I just want to give everyone a little bit of a flavor into R33 and how easy it is to use. We're looking right now at adding a structured form. Do you have some thoughts on what Hyperscience's approach to making this facilitating business user use?
Yeah, I think that when we think about adding a new form and some of the steps that are necessary here, a lot of what exists in the market is based on technology that's been around for a while, and it can be complicated, cumbersome, require some technical assistance to set up a new form. So what we've tried to do, and what our team continues to do, is use newer technology to make it, better coding techniques, et cetera, to make it really easy to set up a new form. And then, even to train the new form and to make sure that we incorporate and try to make the whole experience very human-centric.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can see on the footage, it's just as simple as adding a layout, picking the image that you want. Hyperscience already has functionality for redacting existing information on forms that are already existent, if it's not a blank form. And also defining the fields, particularly on the structured layout, is as simple as clicking and drawing boxes over where you want to extract information.
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And one of the things, and you'll probably be talking about this a little bit later, is that we try to make it easy for the form to be set up, and then also for the end user, the business user, to set a KPI. So in our case, the KPI, of course, is going to be accuracy.
Right, absolutely.
How accuracy do you want? And setting your accuracy threshold is a big part, again, of that human experience, so that the person in charge can say, I want accuracy of this level, and the software will know with certainty how much information is extracted that meets that accuracy threshold. That's really powerful. And then, of course, over time, becoming more intelligent is really, I think, a really key component of how we use ML.
We know that accuracy is not the full story, Russ. Particularly automation rate and minimizing false positives so that we're ensuring, the highest level of data quality in downstream systems is very important. Do we want to talk a little bit about that trade-off?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth a discussion. I mean, the first thing is when we say accuracy, we're talking about accuracy at the field level. At the field level, not at the character level. So that's important. Sometimes when we talk about accuracy, there's some confusion in the market. We've sort of approached it differently, I think. But when we talk about accuracy, the idea is most systems of technology and people, even most systems that are 100% people, they'll achieve 97, 98, 99% accuracy, right? Usually we see about 97-ish. So we can improve on that. We can set a threshold at 98 or 98.5%. When we start after we train the models, when we start 200 to 400, let's say, documents go through as a sample set, we might be at 70% automation, right? So there's a trade-off between accuracy and automation. We might even be lower. But over time, over the next days, as more and more information is filtered through the system will become smarter. So the human in the loop component, where anything that the automation doesn't understand, any field that's not clear, will be kicked out to a human or team of experts. They'll determine what is correct, right? And we have some additional checking for QA purposes to make sure this is absolutely right. Because again, the quality of the input through the machine learning is going to really drive the accuracy over time. So having this good human in the loop interface that's very simple to use is integral to what we do. But that level of automation at the set threshold of accuracy will improve from 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, et cetera. And will continue to improve over time. And that's some of the magic of what we do with machine learning.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where we've achieved some amazing results with one federal agency. At one point, they had over 1,000 people doing work, and now it's well under 100.
That's very impressive. And I think what facilitates that journey and ensuring that your accuracy and automation rates make sense is that the QA portion of Hyperscience is completely integrated and very easy to leverage without any understanding of all these trade-offs and how it exactly all works.
That's exactly right. Yeah. The idea is you don't have to be a machine learning expert. You don't have to be a programming expert. You don't even have to be overly technical. The system's intentionally designed so that a business user with some tech savvy can use the system very quickly and achieve strong business results.
One of the new features that came out with R32 is Flows, which really expanded Hyperscience capability outside of just being purely an OCR engine and allowing it to really stretch its arms and do integration, validations with simple Python programming. What's the vision for Hyperscience going with Flows?
Yeah, so I think R33 is sort of a first step, and we're going to continue to focus and do more with flows. The idea is we have discrete blocks that are part of our core code, so classification and extraction would be two of those. They can then be combined in a very simple way where small elements of code that could use an external lookup or something like this or validation could be inserted in a flow. And in combining these things together, we can achieve a business outcome very quickly. So our system has become much more granular, and in this fine-grained approach, I think is easier to consume and use to achieve business outcomes through blocks and flows.
Absolutely. And currently we're working with a very large government client, and the big benefit that Flows brought into that project was simplifying the overall architecture.
That's right.
Using one system instead of having to pull several different applications to perform these tasks, like validations, like integrations with databases and APIs, really simplified everything. And now we can have our development team focus on specific products, using much less software and also lowering the overall cost.
In a more rigid paradigm, you might have to use multiple pieces of software, and in putting them together, maybe have some sort of process engine driving things. So these are small, external lookups and things of that nature are not they're not overly complicated, but they're really important when we look at the work being done for large volumes of document processing, which is what
Absolutely.
We're working on here. So understanding that processing and validating certain fields and making sure, again, you're feeding downstream systems with very accurate data. This is an important step, and we're really excited about that work.
So Hyperscience has been on the market for quite a while, and there was notably a huge jump from version 28 forward. So what's the roadmap going forward?
Yeah, that's really true. So in R28, if you go back over time, our software was very powerful, but it was somewhat rigid. We had a very monolithic architecture. So our architecture team behind the scenes did a lot of good work decomposing the software, making it more scalable, making it more object-oriented, component-based, and again, fine-grained. And this comes through in the evolution of blocks and flows. So now we have, again, some core blocks, and that continues to evolve. We allow for custom blocks, so additional code, which could be a lookup. It could be a third-party piece of software. It could be something else, right? It could be a piece of AI that can do decisioning, and that will grow over time. Here's an example of something that I recently saw that I thought was interesting. We were working in the mortgage business, and many documents in the mortgage business are fraudulent. So we worked with an external entity, an external company, right, that has a very sophisticated way to understand if a document's been tampered with. So before we ingest a document, we go through an earlier block, if you will, where we determine, is any of the content of this mortgage package fraudulent? If yes, then it goes one way. If no, then it goes to our system. And this was important for the company that we were working with. And I think a great example, simple to understand way of using a block that's in front of a longer flow.
And kind of extending Hyperscience from extracting information purely into understanding what the content
That's
of it
exactly
is.
right, yes.
So I think this was a great conversation. Thank you, Russ, so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really excited about our partnership with Reveal Group and really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Many great things to come. And if you want to know anything more about Reveal Group or Hyperscience, please check out the links below on the video.